there's one thing I can say I've done, it's play Deep Rock Galactic. So obviously I was going to play its follow-up, Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core. I mean, Deep Rock Galactic is right there in the name, so it must be good, right? Well, it's not bad, and it's very familiar, but the differences that are there definitely feel very different. Straight away, side by side, you might not even be able to tell visually the difference between these games. Aside from the UI, you're still underground in the dark with rocky cave walls occupying your view at every turn. The character models and textures, while improved, still give the same kind of blocky, jagged aesthetic of looking kinda like a roided up Nintendo 64 game. But Rogue Core does step up the amount of random bullshit that's scattered around the levels. There are a ton of things that look like they might do something, and occasionally do something, but generally just function as set dressing. However, these various props are prevalent enough that it's easy to overlook stuff you might want to check out because that useful thing you just skipped over looks like the last 400 pieces of machinery you just passed by. Yet the design of these levels is just one of the aspects that really makes Rogue Core feel so different from its predecessor. Unlike DRG, where the bulk of your experience would be single entry dives where a drop pod takes you in, you do the mission, then you ride a different one out, Rogue Core's missions are set up like the longer duration and less popular deep dives. Here, after entering the mission area, you'll travel through the level fighting enemies, completing tasks, participating in general underground shenanigans, and collecting resources until you summon an elevator and corresponding shitload of enemies to fight off until you can make your way down to the next level. But even from the start of this process, you'll notice a pretty big departure from Deep Rock Galactic. Rogue Core's team of reclaimers differ from the familiar quartet of dwarves you're probably familiar with. Here, in this initial early access offering, you'll now have an incredible 25% more classes, bringing the total to 5. However, the nature of these new classes leaves the door wide open for more new classes without worrying about rebalancing everything in the future. The reason for this is, unlike DRG's classic miners, these reclaimers don't use bespoke weapons. Their distinction outside of voices and appearances is that each class has a set of unique abilities. Rather than these half-size heroes filling out specific roles, each class's purpose is more additive than dependent. For instance, this Guardian can plop out a shotgun blast of balls that stun the enemies they hit and can also clap his hands really hard to cause nearby monsters to flee in terror. The Spotter can mark targets for bonus damage while the Falconer launches a drone to harass enemies and even perform remote revives. Meanwhile, the Retcon is all about survival with the ability to teleport back in time to a set location, and he even gets a single self-revive to save the team. Then there's the Slicer that has simply defined his entire purpose and self-worth by getting in close to things and cutting them really hard with a knife. Of course, these abilities aren't the only thing you'll have to keep your dwarven body from being torn apart in the depths. A lot of the weapons you'd be familiar with from the classic Deep Rock make the return, but without being locked to a single class. Instead, as you descend into each mission, your first task after breaching this rocky butthole entrance is to begin a round-robin selection process where each player gets to pick from one of 4 weapons one at a time to start their loadout. Then you'll do the same with your traversal weapon, once again picking from the classics like platform guns, zip lines, drills, and the somehow rarely chosen flare gun. And in a surprise to no one, you'll do the same with grenades. This whole system is built around the kinda sorta roguelite design that this experience is supposed to entail. Though the only thing that really makes a roguelite, permadeath, just works the same way DRG did, where players can be revived and you only fail when the whole team wipes. The roguelite aspect they've adopted is actually just the part where, as you descend through the levels, you'll end up with a constant barrage of upgrades and buffs of different varieties, including numerous momentum-destroying revisits to that same round-robin 4-choice selection. Of course, you'll need to take the time to scrutinize this rotating list of power-ups since it dictates how well you'll be taking on swarms of malicious alien monster creatures that lay siege to your spelunking adventures. The creepy, vaguely humanoid enemies of Rogue Core feel a good bit different from the spider-like monsters that roam the depths of Deep Rock, though one of them did make it into that game in a more recent patch. However, these enemies can be much faster, more acrobatic, and require a lot more effort and precision to take out efficiently, especially as they're buffed up by the selections you make between each level. This shifts Rogue Core's experience much further toward combat than DRG was even in its most aggressive mission types. And with that, the mining prevalent in Deep Rock has been nestled quietly in the back seat of Rogue Core. You'll still have your trusty pickaxe with the ability to chip away at any terrain or enemy faces with a couple quick whacks. Yet there's only one mineral to be mined and collected throughout any mission currently, and that's Exponite. Unlike gold, nitra, or the wide spectrum of shiny materials you'd spend a healthy portion of your time carving off the walls of Deep Rock, Exponite is exclusively for leveling up your team. Dumping it into your new, much faster flying mule will fill a meter, allowing players to trigger that joyous upgrade selection process at any moment someone feels it's time. Navigating through each level of the dive is usually pretty straightforward, with a large cable guiding you between the elevators, but leaving the path downward to investigate every random darkened corner is how you gain the maximum number of strength-enhancing powers. Though with a timer that ticks down, triggering an ever-increasing horde of demonic alien assholes and giant invincible grabber worms that pull you into a mucus sarcophagus means that you can't be too leisurely in scouring the depths for the tools you need to suck slightly less. And this all culminates with a boss that feels like it fits right in with Deep Rock Galactic's boss fights of shooting a thing until it dies, hitting weak spots when it counts, and interacting with unique triggers while regular enemies harass you at the worst possible time. But whether you succeed or fail at your mission, you'll be teleported back to your ship and blessed with an end screen to admire your relative successes or failures and fill a whole new collection of XP bars to unlock more dwarven adventures of shooting everything that moves. Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core, the sequel everyone wanted, delivered in a way that no one really wanted. Rogue Core definitely feels different, despite there being a lot of overlap and carryover from Deep Rock Galactic and the general look and function of the game. It's not just that the focus is more on combat or that you're working with different characters that feel much less like they have a role. Those factors matter, but I think the real issue is that it ends up feeling a bit hollow in comparison because the progression elements just don't hit the same. Where DRG had you unlocking and upgrading capabilities for each character almost straight away, Rogue Core just has a slight variation of the perk system as the only gameplay customizing aspect for many hours of your initial experience. It also feels like the cosmetic system progresses much slower, where DRG didn't require as much time or effort before you were nearly overwhelmed with options to make all of your characters look like clowns as they hopped onto your drop pod and head to work. And the idea of heading to work is also an element squandered in the aesthetic of Rogue Core. Deep Rock innovated on the co-op shooter genre by making it feel like you were doing an interesting job, but also needed to fight to make sure it worked. Rogue Core leans more into the classic styling of co-op shooters where your primary goal is simply surviving through to the end and checking any boxes you can on the way. But as I mentioned at the start, none of this is necessarily bad. Rogue Core carries over a lot of the polish that made Deep Rock Galactic work, especially in the mechanics. It's also an early access title just like DRG was, and anyone who played in those early days knows how Spartan that game was at the start. Plus, the ship that serves as your mission hub is ridiculously large, and while I doubt all of this will be integral to the game down the line, I think it might provide a hint of the potential Rogue Core has to improve and become something really robust. Maybe they'll even let you pick a weapon when you join a match in progress so you're not stuck with whatever garbage it randomly assigns. However, in its current form, it needs more mission and gameplay variety, a stronger sense of progression, and a little more feeling of value for characters and their abilities to take it to that next level. So that's why it's getting the abbreviated score of OK. But if you'd like to see more hot takes, warm satire, and tepid commentary about video games, like this video, send a drop pod for Mega supporter Adam Wutke, and check out more Abbreviated Reviews.